listening to Driving Law, a podcast by Kyla Lee about all things related to the rules of the road.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Driving Law. I'm Kyla Lee at Acumen Law, and with me, my co-host, sort of with me, not really with me, Paul
It's
Doroshenko.
fine. Good to talk to you, Kyla. How's your week going?
Busy, lots of
Good.
court, lots of hearings, lots of car troubles.
Yeah.
If this were just the driving podcast and not the driving law podcast, we'd spend the entire episode talking about why I should never have bought the car I bought.
Well, you enjoyed the car that you bought until now.
You warned me.
Yeah, I did warn you. But I don't use the "I told you so" method because I don't like that. I know what happens.
No, and I'm also not saying you were right because I refuse to admit that you were right.
That's true. It's almost never have you ever admitted that I was right. It's probably about 3 times over the course of the nearly 2 decades I've known you. That you've admitted that I was right about something, except most of my economic predictions at the moment that the pandemic unfolded.
Well, I still maintain that you have an inflated recollection of how specific your economic predictions were, and in hindsight, you think you predicted things better than you actually did at the time.
Oh, no, I mean, I predicted a lot was unpredictable. I predicted inflation.
You predicted it would be unpredictable in the unprecedented situation,
Exactly.
and that changes in society would lead to inflation.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I also predicted a rise in extremism.
You predicted property prices bottoming out.
Yeah, I was wrong on that because right at the beginning of the pandemic, they went crazy. But I didn't give you a timeline for that. So
Okay, so if they ever go down.
if they ever bottom out, then I'll be right.
Okay. Good to know. Anyway, I thought that we would talk today about the Supreme Court of Canada decision from earlier this week on privative clauses in judicial review.
Which you wouldn't think is a driving law thing, but it happens to be more and more a driving law thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's increasingly issues that are dealt with by government or being dealt with through administrative tribunals. This case involved the ethics commissioner. And it was, I know I could see you getting triggered. Just
No,
for the
I just
lead
first
here.
of all, I'm triggered by the tribunalization of the justice system, which I think is awful.
Yes. Anyway, so if you recall, many years ago, there was that whole We Charity scandal involving Justin Trudeau, and there was an ethics commissioner investigation, and the ethics commissioner said, "Yeah, we don't think that he did anything wrong." And so, because he was found to not have done anything wrong, Democracy Watch sought review of the ethics commissioner's decision. And essentially, in the enabling legislation, there was a provision that said that the court could only overturn a decision not if it was wrong on the facts of the or the law, but on a question of jurisdiction. So judicial review was only available on jurisdictional issues, which, as we know, almost never come up.
The old privity clause,
Yeah.
limiting what you can argue.
Yeah. So, Democracy Watch challenged this and went all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada, who said, "The fuck you don't," basically, to the government. You can't just legislate away the power of the courts to supervise the exercise of jurisdiction of tribunals. And to the extent that a privative clause like that exists, it is unconstitutional and of no force and effect. That being said,
What
you
section of the Constitution did it violate?
96 to 101. All of them. But
Those ones. Okay, yeah.
yeah. So they said, you can still limit the availability of judicial review by creating internal review processes. And we see that, like, for example, in BC with WorkSafe, where you can, there's the internal WorkSafe review process, where if you don't like your WorkSafe BC decision, you appeal to an internal supervisory tribunal, basically.
Yeah.
To some extent, the Law Society has this too.
Yeah. Um, I'm just thinking about the limits of this. I mean, in the IRP scheme, the first version of the IRP scheme limited what you could argue with respect to your blood alcohol concentration,
Yep.
and the court struck that down as a Section 8 violation.
Yes.
But the government puts all sorts of other limits on it.
Yes. So as long as there is an internal review process that is um, sufficiently robust as to provide similar remedies to those a court might provide,
Yeah.
as in, like, there are, I think it was the ethics commissioner had an internal review process, but the if even if the original adjudicator was wrong, the internal review process couldn't change the decision. So it was just a, you were right, but sorry.
Can't change a decision.
Yeah, and that's not a real review process. And even then, the court said, like, you can still seek judicial review even in the face of an internal review process, but a judge can deny you the opportunity for judicial review, and we know that they will in those circumstances. They'll say, "Go exhaust your internal remedies first."
Yeah, the old legal fictions set up
Yeah.
and structured into law.
Now,
But as they compound, the more they compound, the less they make sense.
so in terms of how this affects driving law, it doesn't really affect IRPs, right? There's no internal review process with the superintendent, and there's no bar on judicial review.
Yeah. So how does this play into driving law?
The Civil Resolution Tribunal, ICBC, and no fault insurance, and
Oh.
enhanced care.
Oh.
Because right now, if go through ICBC's enhanced care process, you're not happy with whatever assessment ICBC makes, you can take your complaint about their decision, their statutory decision under the Insurance Vehicle Act, to the Civil Resolution Tribunal, who exercises an semi-internal, not really internal, but a review of the decision made under the enhanced care regime. And then if you don't like your Civil Resolution Tribunal decision, there are provisions on in the Civil Resolution Tribunal Act about judicial review of tribunal decisions. Um, so they say, for example, you must commence it within 60 days, unless there's some reason you can't, and then you can get a court order. The standard of review is set out, and the tribunal is ordered to must be considered an expert tribunal in relation to a decision of the tribunal concerning a claim within the exclusive jurisdiction of the tribunal, or for which they are considered to have specialized expertise other than claims related to accident claims. And then on an application for judicial review, for which the tribunal must be considered to be an expert tribunal, the standard of review is on a question of fact or law, patent unreasonableness, on questions of common law rules of natural justice and procedural fairness, whether the tribunal acted fairly, and for all other matters, correctness. Um, and there's also a standard of review
I
that
see where you're
applies.
going, Kyla. You're going to lose our listeners though,
Okay,
uh,
sorry.
because
Back.
yeah. Um, and I would counter all of what you're saying by saying the BC government will just ignore it until somebody takes it to BC Supreme Court. And then the BC government may still ignore it because, as you know, they ignore rulings from BC Supreme Court in their tribunals.
Hmm.
So, the upshot you're saying is that these provisions can be challenged because the limits that have been placed on them on their ultimate decision-making process are too extreme.
Not quite. I mean, I was explaining the grounds. Maybe I'll back up a bit and explain it more clearly for people who don't speak legalese. Um, if it's not an accident related claim, the Civil Resolution Tribunal Act says judicial review is available, and it defines the standard of review, and it says the tribunal is an expert tribunal. Those things are within the realm of the things the Supreme Court of Canada said would be fine because they still have the ability to interfere with the decision. And there's still an actual review process. But on the ones specifically for accident claims, they have a clause that says that the Supreme Court must not set aside a finding of fact by the tribunal unless there is no evidence to support the finding, or in light of all the evidence, the finding is otherwise unreasonable. So they're not purporting to define the standard of review. They're actually purporting to limit the availability of judicial review, which
Okay.
would fly contrary. What you
Yeah. No.
you-
No. I mean, I hear what you're saying. I it is a interesting ruling in that respect, but it's a stretch to bring it all the way back to driving law. The Supreme Court of Canada makes a ruling on the limits that you can place on a tribunal, and yeah, it might play out in the driving law realm. It's an interesting case from the Supreme Court of Canada, but I think you have to have the case to argue it. So I don't
Yeah.
know that it's going to matter. I don't know
Well,
when it will matter.
I don't know. There's a lot of situations of people who are denied benefits under the enhanced care regime that are getting screwed by ICBC, and you know it.
Yeah, oh, I know it, but it also requires somebody advancing that argument, right? Because as I say, the BC government will just ignore it, as they
Yes.
do,
Well,
until it's like square on all fours.
they're also trying to do something sneaky on the patently unreasonable side of things. So if it's a discretionary findings of fact, it was what I just said. And then on the discretionary decisions, they also limit what your actual availability of judicial review is. They say it can only be interfered with if it's patently unreasonable. And specifically in this context, patently unreasonable means it had to have been arbitrary or done in bad faith for an improper purpose, based entirely or predominantly on irrelevant factors, or failing to take statutory requirements into account, which
Well, that last one's the catch-all that might work. The other ones are complete setting a bar so high that it will never happen.
you have proof that your ICBC adjuster is the cousin of the person who was involved in the accident with you. That like how and
I
they need
know.
a med.
I know.
Yeah. So it is essentially it's a privative clause dressed up as a clause purporting to provide an internal review standard, I think.
Well, it also sets such a high standard that it sets the behavior so low. Like, it just is encouraging anybody to mess with it at the other end, in the government end.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that's the big Supreme Court of Canada decision. Maybe one day, maybe there's some enterprising Eric McGracken type lawyer out there who will look at this and will say, you know what, we can bring a public interest standing challenge with,
Sort of on an aside, I
yeah,
would say that it is fascinating that you read all of these decisions and then you see how it could apply to driving law all the time. And you're very often coming into my office saying, "Oh, look at this online, paragraph 72 of this decision. There's this case here and it says this, and this could apply in this circumstance." And I'm like, okay, that is great legal reasoning. It is wonderful that you draw from all of those things. The problem is you might use it, but you may never have the case where that applies. And then you've got to get it to somebody who does, and somebody else is not going to spot it and see the application of it. So it's kind of like that's the sad aspect of it. What,
people.
but I think there may be some value in AI being able to scan all of those cases and pick some of those things up. And we've talked about this, and it's the more and more I think about it, the more I think that there's the value of that in advancing the law.
I mean, I think there's also that I'm often more willing to try and stretch the bounds of the law than other people think is right to do.
Well, I think your brain automatically goes to the creative method of using it. It's not, you also do have those stretchy arguments that you come up with, but you've also come up with some of the more brilliant arguments that, work for us each and every day.
Well, I
So
try.
I'm not knocking you for your stretchy arguments. What I'm saying is that the there's not many people who have that capacity, and there may be that capacity with AI. You and I were talking about circumstances, a case this week of a person who's got an acquittal on appeal for something that AI would have figured out that none of the lawyers did. Um, so
That's
this,
true.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm discouraged and encouraged. Everything that people say is always negative, and I about it, and I just think that I see it such a valuable tool
Yeah.
for
Um,
this and for that other case too.
well, uh, moving on from this
Yeah.
to a combined second topic slash,
The ridiculous driver of the week.
because this one is too big to just be the ridiculous driver, but also too ridiculous to not be the ridiculous driver.
Obviously.
Yeah. So this happened earlier this week on the 25th, and it was at the Abbotsford Airport. A motorhome crashed through the perimeter fence and kept going onto an active airport runway. And obviously, then the airport shut down. They rerouted all the aircraft that were operating at the airport. And they've now released, since I heard this story originally, they've now released the recordings of the air traffic controllers, where you can like hear them telling people who are landing, pull up and go around immediately. So like this was actually a bigger close call than it was made out to be initially.
So the Abbotsford Airport is a significant airport. WestJet flies 737s into there, I think. It is it's a going concern. It's all fenced off like just every other airport, and there's photographs of this RV floating around on the news stories of somebody smashing it through, and not just smashing through the fence and like a mistake smashing, continuing to drive.
Yeah, onto
53-year-old suspect, as I recall, something like that. Um, so like actual significant safety concern for people in aircraft.
yes.
Pretty ridiculous. But also like pretty serious.
Yes, and yet, the arrest that the police made in this case was only for dangerous operation of a motor vehicle and mischief.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to end there. I think any prosecutor who gets that file is going to look at it and approve some more charges. There's provisions in the criminal code. You can get a lifetime sentence for putting people at risk on an aircraft.
Yep. And you can also get charges under like the Aeronautics Act.
Mhm.
I mean,
There's
depending
there's
on
there's criminal code sections like section 70 or something like that, 77, I think I was looking. Then there's the Aeronautics Act. I mean, there's all sorts of different things this guy can be charged with.
yeah.
One wonders, like, what the hell was going through his mind? Is a serious psychological issue. If it was impairment by alcohol or drugs, we probably would have heard that. Um, so
If it was a medical thing, we would know that too. There probably wouldn't have been an arrest.
yeah, well, nah, I wouldn't say that. I mean, the medical things can manifest in all sorts of different ways. I mean, you can have early onset Alzheimer's,
Yeah, well, the
or
police
something along that
probably would
line.
have figured out at the scene that there was, some sort of medical issue.
Oh yeah, yeah. You think so, huh? Abbotsford police we're talking about? I'm each and every police officer is different, so I never paint with broad brush strokes, and most police officers are capable and wonderful. There is a presumption to go to a certain direction. As we know, there's like everybody's presumed to be impaired unless they prove beyond a reasonable doubt to the police that they're not. Um, so who knows what was going on? The medical condition is not something that is ever investigated. It's only like he's not impaired and that's it.
I'm
So
surprised though that they didn't also arrest. Like I get the police probably aren't familiar enough with the Aeronautics Act and like, the entering restricted areas and doing things without authorization charges. But why not arrest for section 77 of the code, which is the any conduct that endangers the safety of an aircraft or an airport?
yeah, that's what I was referring to. You can get a life sentence for that.
Yeah.
You would think the police would have Googled it. But again, like
They could have asked
the
AI.
yeah, exactly. They could ask AI. The prosecutor is going to get it and look at it, and I'm sure there's going to be more than just this, unless it is, you know, the guy who turned to avoid a raccoon and then tried to figure out how he was going to drive his his RV out of the airport after that. Like, I mean,
Runway looks like a road.
you and I always come up with a defense for everybody, so I'm gonna operate under the presumption of innocence. We'll see how this one plays out.
I'm gonna go with stroke or seizure.
Well, I don't think he'd be charged. Again, that would be giving the police the credit of determining the medical issue.
What I think will happen here probably is Crown will, assuming that there isn't some like innocent explanation that becomes apparent, Crown will approve the mischief, the dangerous operation, the and the Aeronautics Act charges. So I guess it'll go to federal crown. And then they won't approve a charge under Section 77 of the Criminal Code because that one does require evidence of intent. And unless the guy made some statements or did something to show that this was intentional conduct to endanger safety, not just intending to go onto the runway, but intending to endanger safety, I think they won't lay that. But I think they will lay all the Aeronautics Act charges that can apply to these facts in case they can't get convictions on the Crim Code charges. Because they'll be pineappled issues, right?
Yeah. I think you can imply the intent based on driving at a runway. So I think you might see that late as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I think that's certain conduct will indicate intent. That seems like conduct that would indicate intent. The bare facts of it to me.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose. What would your other reason be for
Unless you stop,
going up to the
like
runway?
if you drive through the fence of the airport and you stop, that's one thing. If you drive around the perimeter of the airport because you drove onto the airport, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, some people are just stupid too,
Yeah, that's true.
and they seem to get driver's licenses without any problem.
And now you can get them online.
Exactly.
That's our podcast. If you have a driving law related issue, you can give us a call at 604-685-8889 or find us online at vancouvercriminallaw.com. And if you drove a motorhome onto an airport, I would be interested in that case. And tune in next week for another exciting episode of Driving Law.
Don't try and take that case to the Civil Resolution Tribunal, though.